Welcome back, viewers at home, now to shed light on all things Corporate Wellness Week and all things, as we know that this week is really dedicated and initiated to promote wellness among employees in the workplace. Now, for us to get a clearer understanding and learn how companies can actually boost productivity and improve overall health through corporate wellness programs. I am joined by the award-winning wellness expert, Ronald Abvajee. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah so much for joining us.
It's always good to be with you.
Always a pleasure. Now, before we get started on how it works and how we should implement it, can you take us through in terms of understanding what Corporate Wellness Week is about, and most importantly, what are some of its goals for promoting employee health and productivity?
Traditionally, Corporate Wellness Week was all about fruit baskets, yoga mats, sending an emailer about services offered, or a poster on a wall.
Yeah.
But that's 2010 thinking. We're sitting in 2025. It's time that Corporate Wellness Week needs to shift from viewing and corporates from viewing employees as costs to manage to rather being amplifiers of value.
Yeah.
And when you look at employees as amplifiers of value, you begin to shift your narrative from nice to haves or tick off a checklist items to absolutely what is needed contextually and culturally to drive impact and change, maximizing the value that your people create.
And from time to time, it is made to seem that employees are quite demanding. And I think tonight I want our conversation to be from a perspective of both ends, to say employer and employees. And I think now this leads me to my second question, to say, what would you say are some of the common barriers or challenges that companies face when they are now trying to implement some of these wellness programs?
Well, number one is we are faced with the opportunity of Corporate Wellness Week being a national reset button.
Okay.
That's opportunity. But what many organizations and companies are stuck in is legacy thinking. It's legacy thinking based on one simple thing, that they bring in corporate wellness initiatives to measure the return on investment. It's a lagging indicator. And we should actually be looking at it as a return on leadership, because that is where the biggest impact gets created. Did you know that according to the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum, they state that one of the top 5 risks to business continuity globally, one of the top 5, is mental health. Now, if we look at mental health on its own, are we as organizations creating environments of safety? And thus, the legacy thinking is based on a lagging indicator of an outcome, rather than focusing on curating and iterating a need and identifying a need as a leading indicator to create sustainable change, to extract expansive value from your employees.
And how can companies now start to overcome those, lagging indicators and that legacy thinking, and be more proactive in really, treating something before it becomes I don't want to say a problem, because now it makes it seem like employees are intentional in suffering from mental illness in that sense.
Well, when we look at where wellness is headed towards globally, it's very much historically or legacy thinking. It's fixated on the physical well-being and tick off checklist items when it comes to, we've identified a problem with the data, now we need to do a quick talk, or you can call a psychosocial call center. And those are important to have, but it's no longer the essence of what wellness and corporate wellness is. Here's the reality. You as an employee are accountable for your well-being. If you don't feel safe, or you don't have the opportunity to share what you're feeling, that leads to the culture of the organization. And Corporate Wellness Week is shifting into, what does team and organizational culture and well-being look like and feel like? Because did you know that one of the top issues that the Deloitte consulting company has identified in the report is belonging? If you don't feel like you belong in an organization, it impacts your engagement rate in that organization. And belonging, not just to being in camaraderie with other colleagues or your team members, it's belonging to what the purpose is of that organization. We did, as Healthy Living Consulting, research, and our input into companies that we deal with highlighted a 42% increase in engagement. And do you know why? Because we amplified this golden purpose of the organization and what the team actually stands for with the leader, coupled with bringing in connection. Those two led to 42% increased engagement.
Yeah.
Now, that's a lagging indicator. from engagement, but it's actually leading, because when people are engaged in a workplace, what will benefit? The bottom line in your business. So return on leadership is absolutely a critical metric we need to be looking at.
And what's your take on the notion that this exists also because of the, economic conditions like that of unemployment, like that of inflation, where people now are sort of disregarding the idea of, personal purpose versus corporate purpose, and, the idea of belonging, and it's all, sort of dimmed by that focus of, I need to make a living. I need to have, sustenance for myself, if not for my family.
We caught between the parameter of what fills and fuels us, but also the reality of what puts food onto the table, what provides a roof over our head. Because we also know that financial concerns, issues, and vulnerabilities, and also to a degree financial irresponsibility. I mean, employees also need to accept ownership. This is not everything being on the employers. Ownership needs to be with the employees as well. Because if you are making ill decisions, going to mashonisas, creating further debt, if you're choosing smoking, how much are you actually spending on smoking? If you're choosing to shop at brands where you know that the same loaf of bread costs 5 times more, bana, that's a you problem. It's not an organization problem.
Yeah.
But the reality of financial well-being impacting mental health, which impacts the employee's ability to thrive, is a reality we cannot deny. Does it mean many companies can pay employees more? More often than not, no. Smaller companies are being impacted by the decisions big corporates are making, because that's often who we service. And employees in those organizations, they get a salary at the end of the month, whereas smaller companies are the driving force of our economy. And that is where the impact is felt mostly. Again, if you cannot afford to pay your employees more, how are you adding value to your employees to create this expansivity principle that they could then still thrive by keeping money in their wallets? Can you go and get a relationship with a retail outlet so that they could get cheaper groceries? Can you help them get negotiations with their medical aids or their health offerings? There's different ways to skin this cat, and if we are caught in legacy thinking as corporates, we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
That was quite a very powerful response, Ronald, and I really, really always look forward to all the questions that I just throw to you, because I know you're always prepared. But here's another question. How can managers or team leaders that support employee wellness efforts within their teams and within whatever resources and structures they exist in?
Corporate wellness has shifted and must shift. Some companies have, but a lot need to. From HR-led or human resource-led wellness to leadership-led wellness.
Okay.
That is the absolute paradigm shift that needs to happen, because employees resonate more with leaders who share through vulnerability and demonstrate looking after their well-being. Because leaders are not perfect. Leaders are not infallible. Leaders crack, burn out, feel stress, feel strain, go through issues and deal with things. It's just that persona that they create as a wall, and that drains them. So leader-led wellness becomes an opportunity to shift the narrative on this national wellness reset button that we need to have in corporates. So that is the one thing that we absolutely need to look at, and managers are caught in the middle, because managers are answerable to executives, and of course they are responsible for their teams. So managers need to look at it from a perspective of, how do I build the sense of belonging, drive the sense of purpose, and amplify connection within my team in a way that is absolutely relevant right now for my team and resonant, so that you shift from, hey, you can call a call center, here's a stress talk, which is a neck up approach. It's a cognitive approach, into a heartfelt approach. Is that, hey, how do we build in a safe space or psychologically safe one-on-ones once a week, 10 minutes, so that you're safe to talk and you connect with me as a leader or a manager. You begin to amplify the opportunity of this return on leadership in corporate wellness.
And there's something that you mentioned earlier on, HR-led. Can you just delve more in what does that look like? Because from my perspective, I'm thinking HR, hire, fire, and there's this notion that, well, they are there to represent the company. But now that you've delved or made us understand the idea of leaders being able to, be resonatable with employees, can you just explain to us, what does the HR-led look like, and what does it mean?
So HR means human resources, or human capital HC in companies. These new terms are being bandied around. Here's the thing, they look after the humans of the organization. To hire, and yes, to fire, and in between, to discipline if you are moving away from policy, structures, processes, but also to help hold a space for you to thrive. Because their accountability are the people of the organization. And HR-led wellness initiatives is very much legacy thinking because they wear so many hats.
Okay.
And the opportunity is to embrace leadership-led wellness so that you support the HR with actionable tools where leadership now own the responsibility. HR is accountable, but leaders become responsible for driving this wellness change to create this value of exponential and expansive human thriving in their organization as individuals, employees, but as teams, as a collective.
And Ronald, at that, what are some creative, or innovative wellness initiatives you've seen companies use that were particularly successful?
Well, a couple of companies, I'm going to base it on global and national, instances, without mentioning the companies' names, right?
Okay.
So one of the companies I know actually went through a process of listening to their staff.
Okay.
So when they listened to their staff, what the leaders did was immerse themselves into being on the ground.
Okay.
Have you watched that one TV show, Undercover Boss?
No.
So Undercover Boss is where the leader goes under disguise and you won't recognize them and they go into the organization. And they hear stories that they haven't heard before. The second thing is that companies are moving towards experiencing what is the value of the wellness program. When you look at return on investment, you're looking at a lagging indicator, you're looking at an outcome, but you're forgetting the input will determine the outcome. So a lot of companies are now questioning their wellness providers to say, what is the value you are adding into our organization that meets our strategic imperative? And those are the organizations that are holding the providers accountable for delivery on value and thus shifting from just measuring outcomes.
And at that, in your experience, what wellness programs have proven most effective in improving employee health as well as well-being?
Ours, Healthy Living Consultings. Because we are innovative, we are mavericks in our approach and we go against the grain because we listen and we audit initially what is needed. We then curate the service for what is needed and then drive that engagement consistently, which is why we can get a 4.2x increase on engagement. And that is unheard of in the industry. And this is why I've also seen the innovation step in with looking at technology not as a solution, but technology becomes part of the scaffolding to elevate this human value within the organization. And when you look at it as a scaffolding, you begin to look at what else can we add to the scaffolding so that we could micro-stack wellness and well-being that embeds into our culture, DNA, and experience at every touch point in our company, beyond having water canisters or having a yoga mat or having a food basket or a poster on a wall. You're actually giving employees what is relevant to them now so that they could experience a shift today, not in 30 days when you get a report and decide 30 days after that to implement an intervention. We look at it as what can be done now that holds the employee accountable, but responsible, but drives them and supports them with connection, and then shift how do we support the leaders to support the employees. It's all about building in self-directed opportunities to engage and to thrive.
And with that, how do you think technology can be leveraged to enhance, employee wellness efforts, particularly in remote or hybrid work environments?
Oh, hybrid work environments are critical. I mean, that's where the biggest disconnection sits, right? And when we look at the disconnection in outlying and rural areas, or where companies are very vast, and also small businesses are in outlying areas, technology plays a role because we know that the research from the World Health Organization has stated that micro AI coaching and counseling in particular is showing relevance. It's building an impetus because it's a trust factor with the system rather than do I trust calling a call center.
Yeah.
And if you don't have trust in your company, why would you trust calling to talk about a vulnerable issue? You might feel, these are going to impimp me to my
Yes.
boss. How will I not know? Will I be impeded? Will I be looked at as I'm going to be managed out of the business? This is the reality we're dealing with. So technology can be leveraged, one, to fast track opportunities to engage, two is for support, and three is with technology and human intervention and human support married together, you're sitting there with a deg of biryani that is one that you would have every day because it's so delicious, tasteful, and nourishing to yourself, to your team, and to your organization.
Now, before we continue our conversation, I want us to link into a clip where I believe Dr. Radi will tip who is a people engaged specialist, has on low cost action any small business in South Africa can take today in terms of improving staff well-being. Let's take a look.
A quick and easy step for any organization is to implement something as simple as gratitude. And I don't mean just, thank you and that's it. I mean practicing gratitude as individuals within the organization, putting it into your culture, putting it in terms of an agenda for your meetings, to start with thank yous, for instance. Is a quick change of mindset. It helps people reframe. It helps people change the energy. And gratitude is actually proven from a research perspective to change the chemistry of a person. So if we're changing the chemistry of the person and changing the environment, it immediately shows that people are moving towards positivity. They're focusing more on what can be changed, on more of a growth mindset. So that's a quick fix in any organization. However, it doesn't negate the need for an employee wellness program. It is a quick and easy step for all organizations to put themselves on the same footing in terms of changing culture. But if there is a need, because life happens, for a wellness program, they would still need to have backup in terms of the professionals that usually service a wellness program. However, the practice of gratitude is a stepping stone towards creating an environment that is supportive, that is showing care. And that's what wellness does.
Ronald, sadly we have run out of time, but I'd like for you to just share anything considering our conversation that I've maybe failed to mention through my questions.
Tomorrow, HL Consulting, we are hosting a webinar that really expands further on this topic. We're chatting with Gugu Mfupi, award-winning radio journalist, and in that, really addressing these core issues and unpacking it even further. So check out hlconsulting.co.za and register. It's a free webinar because we want to change this and we want to press this national reset button on corporate wellness and let us thrive as employees, as organizations, and as a nation. That's the gift we want to give our nation.
Ronald, thank you so much, for joining us this evening and really giving us so much insight in terms of understanding, all things regarding health. And I think tonight you made us understand what corporate wellness week means and actually in its essence what it should mean and how it should be benefiting the organization itself, not just being, profit-based or around, the outcome in that sense of that organization, but rather how we align, personal purpose, organizational purpose, and all exist in that structure. And, all of us are healthy and happy in that sense and more performative. But Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Afwan.
Viewers at home, that was Ronald Abvajee sharing in all things regarding what Corporate Wellness Week should mean and how we should, be proactive. I mean, after all, employees, it is your responsibility to ensure that you are okay. Because after all, if you're not okay and you don't contribute to that organization, you will be replaced. But viewers at home, for now, let's head over to a net break. We'll see you just shortly.